Suzanne's Paparazzi Jewelry, 24/7 shopping available. 160920 is the code. Show her some love, like she showed us. K&A Custom Crafts on Facebook.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of a Whatever on Wednesday. It's been a few weeks, but we're back in the saddle again, and it's in prime time for the end of baseball season. You're only going to see me tonight on camera. My guest, Jordan Schaap, is with me, but he's only on audio. And Jordan, we're really going to be talking about foul ball safety in the MLB. And I want to preface it by saying I believe Jordan is as well. We're fans of the MLB, but of course, it's really this is predicated because there have been some injuries and I don't want to speak about all the statistics. I'm going to leave that to Jordan. So hi Jordan, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me.
So why don't you give us a little bit of the scoop and tell us the backstory and your mission and how you founded the organization, and I'm going to let you speak to all that.
Thank you. Yeah, so just 2 years ago, I have been always a longtime baseball fan. Baseball's been my favorite game forever. And a few years ago, I got involved thinking like these are preventable injuries. These injuries that are happening throughout baseball, professional baseball, the major leagues and the minor leagues are all preventable. And there was one incident that happened in 2019, which really made me dive into this head first and say, we need to finally get to the bottom of this and find out why this has been going on for so long.
So let's talk a little bit about it. I mean, when we're saying these instances, we're assuming that the viewers and the listeners know what you're speaking about, but really talk about the backstory about how there have been some horrific injuries from foul balls at the MLB stadiums and what really prompted you. I believe you had told me that it was one incident in particular that involved I believe a very young fan and let's talk about the statistics a little bit because I don't think that people understand how how widespread it is, and in particular, you state a statistic where you're saying that in 2019, a fan was injured by a foul ball every other week during the MLB season. So I think that that's pretty shocking to many people.
Yeah, I mean, NBC, at the time I got involved in this campaign, um, in 2019, the NBC study, national NBC, implied basically one person every week was basically maybe seriously injured, like with a head injury or an eye injury. On an average, 20 to 25 people were reporting to first aid throughout the major leagues, 20 to 25 based on NBC's work. So if 20 or 25 people are reporting to first aid, there's probably at least one concussion or head injury of the 25. I don't think that's a stretch. Um, Maybe more. And that told me that we need to do something. There was also a woman by the name of Kelsey McKinney who did her own independent study with an organization called Deadspin. And she reported that in the 2019 season, which was the last full regular season, 15 people, 1 5, were seriously injured in a 26 and 1/2 week season. And she documented all of the injuries, and they were all pretty bad that would probably all
That's
require
that's
emergency room
shocking.
or worse. So, yeah, check it out. It's there. So, I feel like we
And
can
then
do
how did
something
and
about.
then
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, talk about how you founded the organization.
So, about the time the little girl got hurt, I started writing articles, self publishing articles, doing outreach, even making a gesture to the Mets and the Yankees in New York that I would pay for netting upgrades at each of those two stadiums. No questions asked. Let's get it done. And they probably looked at it as like a publicity campaign stunt kind of thing. But I was ready to follow through. So I put my resources into a writer, and he's been helping me. And I started foulballsafetynow.com. And what we've been doing is we've been researching and just going through newspapers over the last 50 years and finding incident after incident after incident. Some people call them accidents, but they're not accidents. There's a difference when you look it up in the dictionary between accident and incident. Um, and we reached out to victims of foul balls, and they've talked to us. And I started Foul Ball Safety Now, and I'm in the process of writing a book. Foul Ball Safety Now clearly shows that I've been interested in this topic for at least 2 years, from writing articles, from hiring a publicist that got me earned media articles in People Magazine and LA Times and LA Daily News, Forbes, Boston Globe, but it still is not getting the job done. The State of the Union is in shambles, remains in shambles. Brendan and I have been interviewing victims. We've been process of writing a book. So a lot is coming together, and it's great to be on shows like yours. So we have an opportunity to open this community up to more people.
Agreed. So let me ask you, when you sent that proposal over to the Mets and the Yankees, what was their response, or
No,
what
there
would
was
be
no
their reason for
response.
not wanting
Radio
to take
silence, as they
advantage
would
of
say.
that offer?
Well, I don't think they need my money. It's almost like telling a family, would you like me to buy a birthday present for your child? They'll tell me to go mind my own business. We can buy our own birthday gift for our own child, stay out of it. Same thing here. It's not really a money issue. It's almost like they don't want to, they never knew how to deal with it honestly and transparently with the fans. Since 1970, we knew when a 14-year-old boy died at the Dodger game in Los Angeles. And certainly that would have been a time where baseball could have finally had an honest, open discussion with their fan base about the foul ball dilemma. But they chose not to. And for 51 years, the State of the Union, even though there may have been some improvements throughout the minor leagues where the majority of the games are taking place, these are affiliates of the major leagues where the balls go almost just as hard and reach people with no netting whatsoever and create havoc. And I believe this is an open secret, and most people don't realize they've been going to games, and their families and their children were at risk all those years. And once they learn about it, I think they're going to believe we could have been part of a weekly or biweekly statistic. And if we knew any of that in advance, there's no way they would have put their kid into that situation.
So what do you believe the reason is? I mean, some of the stadiums have adopted that recommendation and they have increased the netting and others don't. Is it just a matter of their perspective that their view will be skewed and they won't and it'll be a less enjoyable experience? It just seems like a no-brainer to me, so I don't understand I don't understand what the controversy is.
There's no controversy in my mind. It's about getting it done. And since baseball hasn't gotten it done, and we'll get into those questions why they haven't gotten it done. Um, there needs to be an independent netting council at this stage of the game, some sort of regulatory agency that comes in and tells each one of the 120 major league ballparks and minor league ballparks, 150 of them that are still operating today, um, give or take one or two, they need to be told by an independent netting council, these are where the nets need to go. How high, how far, how wide. Their own architects and engineers that are part of some regulatory agency that know the data. Baseball keeps track of everything. They know how fast the balls go, how often they go. And there needs to be a debate, or it needs to be a conversation, or there needs to be a mandate from these organizations. And enough is enough. That's the story. State of the Union is not good. It hasn't
Agreed.
been good. I'm here to tell everyone the State of the Union has always been non transparent and dishonest. So that's my statement. I welcome anyone to push back on anything I say, but Joan, a lot of these people do not want to come to this conversation.
Well, we do have a viewer, and Justin is saying that the commissioner of baseball does need to step up, and that a lot of people, some people love catching foul balls. I mean, is that really it? It's taking the sportsmanship out of the from the spectators. What are the reasons behind? What are the answers to the questions that you had indicated we would touch base on?
Well, there's things like transparency and common decency that they just haven't leveled with us. They know how many injuries they can expect every year, and they're not telling us this. They haven't told us this since 1970. Imagine if they told you in 1971, we can expect these amount of injuries this year. These sections are prohibit children, and we strongly recommend to adults, if you're going to come, bring a mask and bring a glove. They had to have these conversations with us. They chose not to. They still choose not to. They know that little kids have no business being part of a pinball machine where balls go into the seats at 100 and ricochet all over the place. Similar to like adults running with the bulls in countries like Spain and Mexico, they will not allow you to run with the bulls with your child. I believe that there should not have been a place for children. And if adults wanted to flirt with danger and death, it should have been spelled out that way, not in little tiny micro print where they're sort of sneaking one past us all, 70 million of us, who don't read it and know if we get hurt or crushed with a ball, we have no legal recourse. That's sneaky. That's dishonest. And like I said, would you really bring your child to an environment if you knew they could have been part of a weekly or a biweekly statistic? That's something baseball knew, and they chose not to level with the adults about it, and allowed you to bring your kid.
So what has happened since then? I mean, well, let's say we have these people who have had these injuries. I assume that some people have received settlements or lawsuits have been filed. I mean, wouldn't that be enough catalyst for the MLB to step up?
Well, unfortunately, in my mind, they know they've been protected by this legal shield called the baseball rule, which is over 100 years old. So they print it on the back of the ticket, or you can find it way down on your e-ticket that says that if they hurt you or kill you, they're not responsible for it. So in most cases, those people, part of the NBC report, people that have interviewed with me for the book, they've had little recourse. They've gone to their lawyer's office, and most cases, the lawyer says, I can't help you. And then sometimes in a particular state, they'll get to the early rounds in the court, and the judge will then say, sorry, this case cannot proceed. It's the baseball rule. And then occasionally a case will go where the judge will say something like, all right, let's see what baseball knew. Let's see what they got behind the doors at MLB headquarters about advanced knowledge of injuries or how many injuries there were. Let's find out. That's when baseball gets nervous and they make settlements. Doesn't happen a lot. There's been a case in Illinois recently which got some movement going in the court. The judge implied that baseball had advanced knowledge that the
That
Nets did
all
not
sounds
go
pretty
far
disturbing.
enough at the White Sox ballpark in 2018. It's the Eddie Rybarski case, if any of the listeners want to check it out. And she suggested a term called willful and wanton. Willful, want on. It implies that baseball had advanced knowledge that their nets weren't constructed to where they really should have been. So that's good. I want that to become a household term, willful and wanton, because a woman judge, I can't think of her name off the top of my head, she wrote this in June or July of this past year. So the case is proceeding in the Eddie Rybarski case based on the willful wanton term. How we doing? Can you hear me? Hello?
Can you hear us, Joanne?
Jordan,
There
are
you
you
go.
still on?
He's still on.
Jordan, can you hear me? Jordan, can you hear me? I believe you're on mute, Jordan.
How about now?
Okay, we can hear you.
All right. Sorry about that.
So
Something
what do we
happened.
do now, Jordan? What are the next that that's okay. So what are our next steps? How do we remedy this situation?
Well, based on what I just implied, what's going on in the courts, it's a very slow process. There's some cases that may be making some headway, but at the end of the day, we need an active Congress. We need people like me who are willing to take a few dollars out of their pocket, pull off a few stunts, hire a lobbying firm, do what we need to do to get an act of Congress that enforces mandatory extended netting at all of these ballparks. Why are we allowing commercial operation to continue like this? So I believe in an act of Congress. We need money for public policy, and we need an act of Congress. I will continue promoting foulballsafetynow.com. I have some petitions that some of the listeners and viewers could go fill out, which is to repeal the baseball rule, which is to ask for more netting. But baseball's been operating, in my mind, like a traveling carnival without a license. I give them no respect. There's no integrity in baseball. And I stand by that.
So which stadiums have it? I mean, I know that some of the stadiums do have extended netting. I believe that you've said. So what would be the argument for those stadiums that do have it?
The only way
I
we'll
mean, wouldn't they
know.
be a model for this?
Well, no, the only model is if an independent netting council certifies one of these ballparks as maiming free. Until we have a regulatory agency's independent netting council come in, you really cannot know. You won't know. Baseball, those particular buildings and owners, they know. They know where the balls go, how fast, how high, how far. But the general public mostly does not know. So, what would make me feel good is if all the ballparks, not one may be safer than another, but if all of them had the certified seal of approval that this ballpark is maiming free and have a good day, everyone. And that's possible. And it hasn't happened, and it should have happened. And baseball never wanted to deal with it because they wanted to keep their wholesome image. And they know that how many people's lives are destroyed every year, it's not going to really affect their bottom line. These people who are hurt, they don't watch the game anymore. They don't want to go to the game. It's even generational. A woman who I interviewed who was hurt when she was 14 years old in 1979, years later when she became a mom, was relieved that her child chose not to stay involved in baseball. It has a long-term effect.
Yeah, well, that's
The,
yeah, that,
yeah.
of course, especially for parents and the children's. So I'm going to ask you to reiterate a little bit. So
Sure.
I missed some of it because we have technical difficulties. So the baseball rule, because there is a disclaimer on the tickets, it precludes or prohibits fans who have been injured or hurt from filing a lawsuit.
They can file the lawsuit, but they usually don't get anywhere. They usually don't make it out of their lawyer's office. And then sometimes they do file, and then in the early rounds, the judge will say, sorry, the case cannot proceed. And then sometimes, in very small occurrences, there's a case where the judge wants to see the discovery, wants to know what MLB actually knew in advance. And that's when baseball gets nervous and they'll make a settlement with the plaintiff. And in one case, if you hadn't heard because we got cut off, there's a case in Illinois, the willful wanton scenario. Did you hear any of that earlier?
I didn't. So
All right. So
yeah.
the willful wanton
Yeah. So if
term
you could
is a
repeat it,
judge.
I'd
The
appreciate
judge
it.
implied in Illinois, one particular case in 2021, that the plaintiff's case can continue. Eddie Rybarski was hurt at a White Sox game in 2018. And the judge suggested that the term willful wanton should be applied, which implies that the baseball, who's the defendant, knew that they did not do the netting to where it needed to be. So they only took it to the certain level where they should have taken it even further. So willful wanton, a term everyone should look up. Willful wanton, WANTON, preceded by willful. Willful wanton is a very powerful term. I hope everyone learns willful wanton because that's a very strong encouragement for plaintiffs. And that's in the state of Illinois. But very little is happening in the courts. Very few people are getting any kind of justice. And unfortunately, there's the long-term effects from all these hundreds, if not thousands of people that have had really serious life-changing injuries. They don't want to be connected to the game. They don't want to watch the game. They haven't gotten an apology from baseball. And if they did, it really would not be genuine because it implies, if an apology would imply that they would be the last person that got victimized by the foul ball scenario. So I think those victims would only accept that gesture from MLB if they decided to finally fix the problem and make baseball and major league and minor league games maiming free.
So what do we do to help, Jordan? How do we
Well, yeah, I
spread the
mean,
word? I
please
mean,
go to
you
the
mentioned some
website
petitions. Where can the
foulballsafetynow.com. Please sign the
Okay.
petitions. If there's any
All right, great.
entrepreneur, somebody who's got a few dollars, call me. We can do things together. We need to spend money. We need millions of dollars possibly for public policy change and finally make this the law of the land, an act of Congress. And unfortunately, the politicians are playing games and they're not serious about it based on some follow up, some trying to do with Senator Dick Durbin's office in Illinois and his conversations he's had with Commissioner Manfred's offices over the last few years. And in my mind, zero has been done. As long as I know, there's 42 minor league ballparks from in this 2021 season that still have no netting over the dugout. Where did that little girl get crushed in Houston past the end of the dugout? It can happen anytime in one of these minor league ballparks. And in Peoria, Illinois, where I had flown a plane, I rented out an airplane to tow a banner to make a statement because they were hosting games with no nets at all, even above the dugout. So the State of the Union is bad. And until a
Oh my
regulatory agency comes in and says to MLB and minor leagues, and the MLB pays the salaries of all the minor leaguers, protect your fans. Take the burden off these young professionals that have to bear the burden knowing they could be in a community that maims people. And that's what these young professionals are doing. They're joining the minor leagues and they're compromised from the moment they join the minor leagues. They're able to tell their parents to hide behind the nets, but they can't really tell everybody else. Yeah.
All right, well, great. So I'm going to encourage everybody. Did we miss anything? I'm going to encourage everybody to go to your website and they can reach out to me if they want to get in touch with you. And yeah, let's spread the word. So I
Please
appreciate you
do.
coming
It's a
on
big
tonight.
problem. And, the book should be coming out at some point, and the book will come out when I have all the data that I need and an audience that's ready to, take in this topic more. And I really appreciate the opportunity, Joan. Please go to Foul Ball Safety Now,
All right, great.
foulballsafetynow.com, and happy to talk to you anytime.
All right, great. And thanks to the viewers and the listeners. We appreciate you tuning in. And of course I always thank, my guy Chris behind the scenes. So thank you, Chris, and you can play us out.
Thank you.